The winter campaign of 2024 was one of the most loved campaigns so far. There was no shortage of competition and players pushed themselves to get the best possible times. Shortcuts were found all over the tracks, and there was a battle between Wirtual and Giuliano for the world record of map 20. The first shortcut was found on track 14. The track starts with a dirt uphill, followed by a grass turn with a small jump. If you look at the track from a top-down view, it's obvious there is a more direct line to the next checkpoint. And everything lines up to just jump there. So that's exactly what players did. The track is played with the snow car, which released together with this campaign. The snow car can turn very sharp, so a special setup isn't necessary. All you need is a good start with enough speed and you'll be able to jump over the scenery, in between the trees and land back on the road. But later in the campaign, a second shortcut was discovered, and it is much more difficult. Directly after you land from the first shortcut, there is a reactor booster, followed by a big ice slide. The average player like me would never find a shortcut here, but reactor boosters are often used to do the most crazy shortcuts. When you drive over a reactor block, rockets are applied to the wheels of the car. The booster can either be pushing the car up or down, depending on what direction you drive over the block. This detail is very important for the shortcut. When you look to the left of this reactor booster, you can find this scenery block that looks a little bit like a ramp, and it seems to have a pretty clear path to get back on the track. But all of these scenery blocks are also penalty blocks, so the car slows down on them. And with reactor booster pushing the car down, there is no way that this path will be faster. But what if you can get a reactor booster to push the car up instead of down? Then you could potentially fly over all of this scenery and land back on the track. And of course, players found a way to do this. By drifting the car on the reactor booster, it is possible to turn it just more than 90 degrees. This makes the game think the car is going in the other direction, as it is technically facing that direction more. This changes the reactor booster on the car from one pushing it down to one pushing it up. Once this was discovered, players started trying the shortcut, and the first person to set a new world record used the reactor booster to jump off the track, landing just past the water. Then they took the ramp, flying over the rest of the scenery, hitting this last block and landing back on the track. This saved about 0.4 seconds over the old world record. But Maniac was not happy that this world record was taken from him, so he hunted the track and managed to reproduce the shortcut to take back first place. But he saw more potential in the shortcut, so he kept hunting it. With the lower line, he jumps between the trees. Because of the reactor booster, the car gains a little extra speed when going through the trees. This is because the reactor booster pushes the car off the tree, giving an extra speed boost. He then takes the ramp, jumps next to the scenery block, and gets a near perfect inside line to the next section of the track, saving about 1 second. He then carries this advantage through the rest of the track. The nice thing about this shortcut is that it's at the beginning of the track, so if you fail, you can quickly try it again. But when you get a good try, all pressure is on, as you still have to drive the rest of the track at top level pace, knowing that if you make a mistake, you'll have to redo the shortcut as well. Getting this shortcut is so hard that only 11 players were able to beat the best non-shortcut time. Map 20 is another track with 2 shortcuts, and the first one is surprisingly similar to the one on track 14. For the normal way, you take this first checkpoint and drive down through the slow motion block. This makes the whole game go in slow motion except for the timer. It resets pretty quickly after, but you still need to get up this ice hill and then to the checkpoint. If we look at the track from a top-down view again, it's clear that there's a shorter path. And just like map 14, players take a turn to jump off the track, landing directly by the checkpoint. Although you do have lower speed than the normal way, the time you save with this route is enough to save about a second. Later in the track there is a very similar part as in the beginning, where you go through a slow motion block and a bit further in the track it gets reset. That was a sign for players to look for another shortcut, and it didn't take long. Just like the first one, this shortcut was found on the first day of the campaign. The original version of the shortcut was done by getting up the ice hills, drifting and taking an inside line to the right, then jumping off after the next checkpoint. This results in falling into penalty snow and then landing on the track, hopefully in an ice slide. Even if you don't do this cut very well, it will most likely save you time, as the normal route is just so much slower. This map is actually a remake of track 21 of the 2020 summer campaign. Wirtual set the world record on that map. This, in combination with the 2 shortcuts, piqued his interest. So he decided to hunt this map to try to set and keep the world record. But he wasn't the only one that loved this track. Techie and Giuliano were also interested in hunting for the world record, so the game was on. Several improvements were found to these shortcuts. On the first shortcut you take a tighter line than the original cut, saving a little more time. Then at the second shortcut, in the turn after the ice uphill, it is possible to do a no slide. The difference is that instead of drifting the car, you try to keep full grip, which will let you accelerate faster than drifting. This, together with driving as close as possible to the corner, would be the best setup for the shortcut. Then, by hitting the wall, you can spin the car. With this spin, it is possible to get the car into an ice slide immediately when going on the track. With this new approach to the shortcut, it was possible to save up to 4 seconds on the track. On the second day of the campaign, Techie started hunting it. He got a new world record and broke his own record 3 more times that day, shaving off almost a second from the previous world record. A week later, Wirtual also started hunting for the world record and got a 45.020, which Techie broke the same day by a tenth of a second. After beating each other's world record a few more times, Giuliano suddenly took first place. They kept beating each other's records by fractions of a second, until the 23rd of February. Giuliano beat Techie's record one last time by just 6 thousandths of a second. This record would go unbroken for over a month. But on the 25th of March, Wirtual took the #1 spot back. Then that same day, Giuliano beat his record by 3 thousandths of a second. Wirtual then hunted the map more and took it back that day with an exact same time save of 3 thousandths of a second. Wirtual kept improving this run over the next few days, until Giuliano took first place back, just 3 days before the winter campaign was ending. But Wirtual didn't want to give up just at the end of the campaign. One day before the end of the campaign, he hunted the track more and got an incredible run. At the shortcut, he did a perfect no-slide, getting as close to the corner as the game will allow. Then on a drop-down, he gets the nose of the car to face down while spinning. Because the nose is down, the wheels of the car get knocked up when he lands. Then only one wheel is touching the penalty snow, which lets him keep more speed. Then the car turns into a perfect ice slide. But Giuliano got the exact same setup, and is even a little bit ahead of Wirtual. They raced the rest of the track wheel to wheel. But on the last turn of the track, Wirtual gets a better line and sets a new world record that would stand until the next day. This secured the world record forever, as the campaign ended and the leaderboards are now locked forever. The #1 spot for this track was beaten 36 times in total. Before we get to the most advanced shortcut of the campaign, I would like to ask you to subscribe if you liked this video so far. It would help me grow this channel so I can keep making videos. Track 22 has a reroute that lets you reactivate a reactor booster. It's followed by a bug slide, which is a unique bug in Trackmania that players use to their advantage. This is how it works. A bug slide is usually done on low grip surfaces like grass and dirt. It works by turning the car 90 degrees and holding accelerate and brake, and turning at the same time. This gives the car full grip and lets you turn very sharp at high speed. The hardest part of this trick is the setup, as you will slide out if you rotate more than 90 degrees, but if you rotate too little, you will lose a lot of speed, because the bug slide will start later, or you won't be able to do it at all. On the normal route of track 22, you take a reactor booster before and then again at the checkpoint. Then the next checkpoint resets this reactor booster, followed by penalty grass, which slows the car down when you drive on it. From a top-down view of this part of the track, a shorter route is pretty obvious, but there is a pool of water in the way and you need enough speed to jump over this grass hill and land back on the track. Another problem is that taking this route would result in missing these 2 checkpoints. But in Trackmania, it doesn't matter in what order you take the checkpoints. You can take them in whatever order you want. This gave players an interesting idea. By first going through the checkpoint that resets the reactor booster, then turning the car and taking the checkpoint that gives the reactor booster, they could have an active booster to jump over all of these obstacles, while also taking the 2 checkpoints. And because they drive through the reactor booster from the other direction, the booster pushes the car up instead of down. Then all you have to do is jump over the grass hill, accelerate in midair and land at the next checkpoint. But compared to the author time on this track, they are behind at this point by about half a second. The big difference, however, is that they still have an active reactor booster at this point, and they use it to its fullest potential. The red reactor booster lets you accelerate absurdly fast. They use this to quickly pass the author time and maintain a lot more speed. Because the reactor booster is up, they can just hover over all the terrain without any penalty. But the next part of the track is a big grass turn. Because the car has low grip on grass, this turn is impossible to do with this speed, as you would just slide out of the map. That's where the bug slide comes in. After jumping off the scenery, they turn the car 90 degrees into the grass slide and do a bug slide through the entire turn. Looking at the top two players, Corny gets ahead of Maniac because he gets extra speed from the reactor booster by going slightly lower. But Maniac angles the car better and he gets into the bug slide earlier. This lets him keep more speed and pass Corny in the turn. Then he keeps his pace through the rest of the track and gets the world record. I would like to ask you again to subscribe if you want to. It would help me make this channel big enough to make it my job, which would be awesome.